Alright mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode of IMO. In this video we're talking about the 2017 summer transfer window which has now closed. We're looking at who smashed it and who struggled, finding out who has essentially won the transfer window. Let's go. Right, first and foremost, don't forget the Wembley Cup is coming very soon. Hashtag United versus the F2 Freestyler squad of YouTubers, which is going to be unbelievable. Check the links in the description. Get yourself some tickets. We're expecting record crowds, people. Okay, on with the transfer window video. So, it's important to point out, this isn't about who we think's got the best squad. It's not saying who we think's going to win the league or anything like that. We've done the predictions video. It's saying who we think's done the best business. That's looking at your squad at the start of the window and at the end of the window and who's made the most improvements and maybe got the best value for money as well. So we're going to go through all the Premier League teams and also we're going to do some special mentions for clubs outside of the Premier League throughout Europe, and we're going to give them like a grading system you get in school. So the best you can get is an A+ if you've smashed it. You could get an F if you've failed or flunked the transfer window. Let's go. Okay, starting off with AFC Bournemouth in alphabetical order. I think these guys had a really solid window. They didn't go and buy 10, 15 players, but they didn't need to. They were doing quite well, Bournemouth. If I was a Bournemouth fan, I'd be over the moon with how they've been doing over the last few years. But they strengthened well. They got Begovic, proven Premier League quality. They got Defoe. I mean, he's the definition of proven Premier League goal scoring. Yes, he's getting a little bit older, but he's still got something in his locker. He went on loan to Bournemouth back in his career in the early days as well, so he's got a little bit of history there. And of course, they've got Nathan Ake, who's had history at Bournemouth as well, being on loan there, done really well. I'm surprised Chelsea let him go. Good buys for Bournemouth. I'm not going to be focusing on every single player a club bought and every single player they got rid of, because that's just going to frankly take too long. I'm looking at the big names, and in terms of sales, they didn't really lose anyone that's really going to hurt their squad, in my opinion. Max Gradel had a lot of potential. He's gone to Toulouse, but did he ever really deliver for Bournemouth? No. So I'm going to say they had a really good window. I'm actually going to give them an A-. So they've done quite well, Bournemouth. Well done. Next up is Arsenal. Everyone's talking about Arsenal on social media right now. Arsenal fans are not happy. How did they do in their window, though? It started off quite well. They brought in Lacazette, some big money spent on a record transfer, decent striker, exactly what they needed. I was really happy for Arsenal fans when I saw this. Then they got Kolasinac, the best left-back in the Bundesliga last year, and they got him on a free. That is good business. It was a very good start to the window. It looked like things were looking up for Arsenal. They said they had a £150 million war chest to spend. As it transpired, that didn't really happen, did it? In fact, they ended up making a net profit for the transfer window. Now, there's nothing wrong with making a profit if your squad is better afterwards. You can do great business and have a better squad. It's possible. Like Kolasinac on a free is good business. However, we all know the Arsenal squad needed a lot of strengthening. They started the right way and then it went downhill. They've lost Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who has his negatives for sure, but he was one of their better players in my opinion. Like certainly within their best sort of 4 or 5 midfielders. They haven't really replaced him. They've kept Alexis Sanchez, which you could see as a massive victory for them. However, how motivated is he going to be moving forward? It's going to remain to be seen. You know, he is a very motivational character. He does get stuck in on the pitch, always gives his all. So hopefully he'll still do well for them, but they might have been better off selling him to City, getting the big money for him with 1 year left on his contract, and then bringing in someone in. They tried to do a massive 92 million buy for Lamar, which backfired. Ultimately, after they've lost Gabriel Paulista, they've sold Gibbs, Lucas Perez has left as well. Is their squad a lot stronger than it was this time last year? I wouldn't say it's weaker, personally, but I wouldn't say it's a lot stronger, and they should have spent a lot of money if they wanted to keep up with the big clubs around them. I know some people will be saying Arsenal have got like an F for the transfer window this summer. I actually don't think that's fair. I think they've done a little bit better. They've bought some decent players in Kolasinac and Lacazette, but they could have done a lot more. They've got the money to do a lot more, which is what's frustrating. And frankly, as we look at their competition, the other teams going for a Champions League spot, you'll see they've been a lot more ambitious in this window and they've really improved their squad. So for that reason, I'm giving Arsenal a D. Not great for Arsenal, not great for Arsenal fans, and not great for Arsene Wenger. Moving on to Brighton. Now, have they brought in enough quality to stay in the Premier League? My guess is they haven't. Okay, I could be wrong. Of course I could be wrong. But people like Matthew Ryan, decent keeper. They've got Tim Krul as well. They've got a couple of goalkeepers. Izzy Brown on loan from Chelsea. Is it going to be enough for them? For me, they needed to show more ambition in this window. I'm giving Brighton a C. Okay, Burnley are up next. Now, this started off pretty bad for them. They lost Michael Keane, their best centre-back. They got good money for him, but their squad was significantly weakened. Since then, they've also lost Andre Gray, who's probably their best striker, who was at the time. So they've lost two of the most important parts of their team. That's not a great window. They have bought some decent players in. Jack Cork from Swansea, I think, could do well at Burnley. Chris Wood from Leeds has potential as their record signing now, I believe. Jonathan Walters is a very, very Burnley player, isn't he? But have they actually replaced like for like? I'd say no. I'd say they've lost some quality. For that reason, I'm going to give Burnley a C. Next up is Chelsea. Now, this is an interesting one. They did a lot of business on the transfer deadline day. Obviously, they're the title holders, right? The current champions. So they didn't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel and change their squad massively. They were looking to offload Diego Costa. We knew that from a long time ago, but they didn't do it. Technically, still on their books. Is he going to play? I think it's unlikely, but they still do have Diego Costa as we record this. They did, though, lose Nemanja Matic, which is huge. He was a big part of their team last year alongside Kante in the middle, and they didn't just lose him, they lost him to a rival club, Manchester United. We saw them do the same thing a few years ago with Petr Cech, letting him go to Arsenal. For me, that is criminal. Why are you letting such a big competitor, the team that's probably most likely to take the title from you right now in Manchester United, have one of your key players? It's crazy. They may feel they replaced Matic with Bakayoko. The reality is they needed to do much more than replace like for like. They needed to add depth to their squad. One of the reasons they did so well in the league last year was they weren't playing European football. They're in the Champions League this year. The squad was too thin to cope with all the different games. They have added players though. On transfer deadline day, we saw them get Zappa Costa from Torino as a centre-back and Danny Drinkwater from Leicester, meaning they've actually got, if they want to, the Kante-Drinkwater centre-mid partnership that helped win Leicester the league a couple seasons ago. Let's not forget Rudiger either, really good centre-back they brought in from Roma, and of course Alvaro Morata, the club record signing, very, very good striker who started the season very well. And Chelsea are always good at getting value for money from their sales, you know, the likes of Cuadrado leaving the club. We've already mentioned Nathan Ake and Begovic both going to Bournemouth. I do have an issue with some of their loan departures. Kurt Zouma to Stoke. You just brought in a load of centre-backs. If Kurt Zouma's not good enough to be around your squad when you're playing three centre-backs, offload him. Don't just loan him out, in my opinion. Likewise, they've brought in centre-mids like Drinkwater and Bakayoko, but they've loaned out Loftus-Cheek, young English centre-mid. Why can't he get game time? And they've sold Chalobah to Watford, who looks like he could do well for Watford. It's annoying to see such young potential go through the motions at Chelsea for years and years and years and then never get a chance in the team. Chalobah's playing international football now. Is he not good enough to be a centre-mid option for Chelsea? Ultimately, I think the people they've bought in have been good buys. Danny Drinkwater may be a bit of a question mark on whether he's Chelsea quality, but I don't think they've done badly. They just lost a lot of quality as well, and for me, they needed to get a deeper squad. I don't think they've quite achieved what they wanted to. They missed out on some targets. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Ross Barkley both turning them down. Llorente as well was a striker they wanted. Instead, he went to Spurs. So for that reason, I can't give them a great grade. I'm going to give Chelsea a B-. It could have been worse, but it could have been better. Crystal Palace obviously got a new manager in Frank de Boer. They've strengthened their defence with the likes of Jaro Rijderveld, who's a good defender. They got their man Mamadou Sakho, who they had on loan from Liverpool. That could be crucial for them because they've had a slow start to the season. Already mentioned Loftus-Cheek on loan. They also got Timothy Fosu-Mensah on loan from Manchester United. Decent enough players. Will Crystal Palace end up needing more? I think they might. Their squad is still a little bit thin, particularly up front. They haven't got a lot of cover if Benteke gets injured. But they didn't really lose anyone that bad, so I wouldn't say their squad's got worse in this window. It has improved. So I'm going to give Crystal Palace a B for their transfers. Next up is Everton, one of the most active clubs in this transfer window, and a big catalyst for that was the sale of Romelu Lukaku for around the 90 million mark to Manchester United. That's a huge sale. It's a huge loss to your team. Your top goal scorer for a number of years. You can't really replace Lukaku. And in fairness to Everton, they know that and they haven't tried to. They've taken that money and they've distributed it across the team. And what they've got is actually a much stronger squad now. So of course they've got a big hole up front in the shape of the big Belgian, but they've got Rooney now, they've got Sigurdsson, they've got Sandro Ramirez, Davy Klaassen. And defensively, they've strengthened with Michael Keane, Jordan Pickford, young English players. I mean, that's decent business, you have to say. In general, I think Everton have had a quality window, especially when you consider that the sale of Lukaku is probably inevitable. He gave him a good run, but he wanted to go and try himself at a bigger club. Everton could do well this season. I think their transfer window's been decent. If it wasn't for the loss of Lukaku, they'd probably have the best window in the whole league. But with that in mind, I'm giving them an A-. Still very good. Still very good. Now, Huddersfield Town. If I was making this video a few weeks ago and I'd seen their transfers, I probably wouldn't have rated them as highly as I do. But now the season's started, and they have started very well, Huddersfield, you've got to give them some plaudits. Particularly for the likes of Steve Mooney up front, who looks quite decent. Aaron Moy, I'm not sure how you say it, but he was with them obviously last year in the Championship on loan from City. They got him on a permanent transfer. He's already scored a worldie. Their new goalkeeper, Jonas Lossell, could be the goalkeeper of the month, even the player of the month. Clean sheets all over the shop. Huddersfield have done good business. They could have done better. They could have brought in some bigger names that might have made it look like survival was more guaranteed. But I wouldn't say they've had a bad window. The verdict is still out for Huddersfield, but I'm going to give them a B. Leicester City. Now, I actually thought they were having a really good window until they lost Danny Drinkwater. They brought in Harry Maguire from relegated Hull, decent. They brought in Vincent Iborra from Sevilla. I really rate this defensive midfielder. I think he could do well. He may end up being a kind of Danny Drinkwater replacement. They brought in Iheanacho. This is someone I wanted to join West Ham at one point. Really good player. He hasn't really played much at the start of the season so far because Vardy's actually been scoring goals, but he will feature for Leicester and he will score goals for them. That was a good buy. And even the likes of Dragovic on loan from Leverkusen, which they did on deadline day, was a solid addition. The defence definitely looks stronger this year. But they did lose Drinkwater, who's been a huge part of their team and their success for the last few years. We're not sure how they're going to cope without him. They got good money for him though. At 27 years old, he's kind of entering his prime as a centre midfielder, but they got 35 million for him. With this stuff taken into consideration, I'm going to give Leicester a B for the transfer window. Liverpool. Okay, so Liverpool didn't go crazy. They didn't bring in a load of names, but they strengthened in key areas. For years, they needed a left back. They got one in Andrew Robertson. They needed cover for Mane, because when he was missing last season, they didn't look anywhere near as good. They got Salah, who started the season off very well. They kept Coutinho, who may still leave in January at the end of the season, but they kept him there. He could still put in some big performances for them this year. They got Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain from rivals Arsenal. I'm not sure how much the Ox is going to feature for Liverpool, whether he's going to be used as a centre mid or a winger, but he's a great squad player, can play in a number of positions, and like I said, they took him off a rival team. So that was good business. Even Solanke from Chelsea, who obviously Chelsea didn't rate that much, but let's remember they got Daniel Sturridge from Chelsea as well, young English striker. He's had a good pre-season, Solanke, so I think he could feature a little bit this year. In terms of departures, the only one that's really relevant for me is Mamadou Sakho to Crystal Palace, because that is one area they still need to improve. Probably goalkeeper and centre-back are their two problem areas. That's my only concern. If they'd got Virgil van Dijk, I would have probably said they had the best window or one of the best windows in the league. They've still got a little bit of a problem area in defence, but their attack is so magnificent right now, it might not matter. I've been impressed with Liverpool's business. I'm giving them an A-. If they'd got a decent centre-back in, I might have given them an A+. Speaking of A+, Manchester City absolutely smashed the transfer window. For me, a good transfer window is when you look at your squad, look at the problem areas that need to be addressed, and you address them. That's exactly what Man City did. They had an ageing back line. So many defenders that were a few years past their peak weren't good enough for the sort of club Man City want to be. Clichy, Sagna, Zabaleta. They got rid of all of them. Kolarov, gone. And they bought in quality. Kyle Walker, Mendy from Monaco, Danilo, the versatile player from Real Madrid. They're a different team now. Overnight, they've transformed their squad. Not to mention Bernardo Silva from Monaco, adding more youth to their attack, which is getting older as well. The likes of David Silva in there. They brought in Ederson, the goalkeeper, who could be decent long term. We need to see more of him, but they obviously rate him. And a lot of the deadwood is gone. Wilfried Bony wasn't getting games. He's gone back to Swansea. Iheanacho, I think, should have got more games at Man City, but he wasn't. He wasn't in Pep's plan, so they got rid of him, got a bit of money for him as well. For me, there's not a lot of problem areas left in the Man City squad now. It's just a question of if it can match up with the likes of Manchester United and the other teams it's going to come up against in the Champions League. But the Man City squad has got so much better over the transfer window. I'm having to give them an A+. Lot of money spent, but in this window, as we've seen, you have to spend if you want to achieve, and they've done it. Fair play to them. They gambled. It might pay off. But Manchester City aren't the only club from Manchester who've had a great transfer window. Manchester United smashed it as well. They didn't bring in loads of players, just 4 players, but 4 key game changers. And one of them is Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who technically isn't even a new signing. He was there last year, but they did release him and re-sign him because he's made good progress with his injury. I think he's taken a big wage cut as well as he's getting older, and he's probably not first in line now. But that's still quality to have him around the dressing room. And the reason Ibra's not first in line is because they got Lukaku. Yes, they spent big for him, but he's worth it. He's already shown what he can do in the Premier League in years prior. He's already started well in his first season for Manchester United. He could be the difference for them. And when you consider they brought in Lindelof as well, improving that defence, and Nemanja Matic, not only a quality, much needed central defensive midfielder, allowing Pogba to get a bit further forward, but they got him off the current champions Chelsea. A big mistake from Chelsea. Massive coup for Man United. I know these players weren't cheap, but they're paying the going rate when you look at the other clubs in England. Sure, in other countries you can get better deals, but in the Premier League it costs you big bucks if you want to get good players. Manchester United have showed their ambition and they've improved their squad. They were already hard to beat last season, very hard to beat. They're going to be even harder to beat this year, and they look much more dangerous in front of goal. Manchester United, I am going to give an A. In terms of offloads, the main one was Wayne Rooney, their record goal scorer, leaving, but they've got rid of him at the perfect time. He got his record. He did well. He won their double in his last season, obviously, the Europa League and the League Cup. And now he's actually scoring goals at Everton as well. So it was a nice way for him to leave. And they brought in Lukaku from the same club that Rooney went to. It's a good story. And they got him off the wage bill. He was costing them a lot of money. So they're getting an A. Could they have got an A+? I think if they brought in one more player, it would have been the difference. It's really tight. You could almost give them an A+, to be fair. I'm giving them an A. The grades are dropping for the next club, though. Newcastle United have not really done what they needed to do, in my opinion. They've got a good manager in Rafa Benitez. They've come up. They've got great support, amazing fan base, back in the Premier League. They needed to show some ambition. Not necessarily big names, but some real squad strengtheners to make sure their club is ready to stay in the Premier League and ready for the fight. I'm not sure they are with the lads they've brought in. Christian Atsu, Manquillo, Joselu. These are okay players. They've played in the Premier League before. Have they set it alight? No, they haven't. Newcastle deserve better, in my opinion. Rafa Benitez was promised better, I imagine. He was promised to be able to spend a bit more money than he has. He's probably quite frustrated now. Could be one of the first managers to leave if he gets a better offer from elsewhere. If Newcastle just made one or two big, significant signings, it could have been a difference, but I can't really rate what they've done this window. I don't think they've tried hard enough to stay in the Premier League. I'm giving them a D. Now, Southampton have managed to avoid selling any of their big names for the first window in a while. Usually they're losing some big names every summer. Usually they're going to Liverpool. And it could have happened, again, with Van Dijk this summer. It could still happen in January, of course. But they kept hold of the big Dutch centre-back for now, which could be huge for them as long as he's motivated and he's ready to perform on the pitch whilst he's there. They've got a new manager. Their biggest signing is probably Lamina from Juventus. Decent centre-mid. They haven't set the world alight. I'm not thinking they're going to improve massively from last year. But they also haven't had a bad window in terms of losing big players, and usually they lose players. Everyone thinks they're going to struggle, and they don't even struggle. They sort of cement their place in the league. So this year, with all the same players they had last year still there, they could do even better. So I don't know. I'm going to give them a C. I'd say it's an average window for the Saints. Stoke City have been fairly lively. They brought in Darren Fletcher from West Brom. Getting a little bit older now, but a decent centre mid. He won't do them any trouble in there. Kurt Zouma is a good little loan signing from Chelsea. I think he's more than good enough to play for Stoke. Choupo-Moting from Schalke in the Bundesliga. How's he going to adapt to English football? Martin Zindi they made permanent though. He was a good centre-back for them on loan previously. I think that's not a bad buy when they've got Zouma alongside him. Shawcross. They've got some good centre-backs now. And they've got Kevin Wimmer from Tottenham. So they've got a really good selection of centre-backs. They paid quite a lot of money for Wimmer. 18 odd million. He was okay for Spurs when he filled in at centre-back. He's probably going to get more game time, I imagine. I'm not sure who they're going to go with centre-back now. Maybe they're going to play three centre-backs most games with Diouf at wing-backs, kind of what they've been trying to do so far this season. But the main signing, of course, was Hesse on loan, but already started his Stoke career well. It's another Champions League winner they've added to the squad. I think they've got the most Champions League winners of any team in the Premier League now, which is crazy. Stoke are showing ambition, which is what the transfer window is all about. In terms of departures, Arnautovic has left to my club, West Ham. Now, he was one of their better players, but he's an inconsistent performer, Arnautovic, and they got good money for him, 25 million. So it's a weird one, because as a West Ham player, apart from until he got his red card, I'm happy to sign him. But then as a Stoke perspective, considering who they've brought in to replace him, like Hesse, I'd be happy to sell him. It was a good deal both ways, I'd say. Bojan went out on loan. On his day, that guy's unbelievable, but he's very inconsistent. Some injury problems as well. And Mbula, who was their record signing, has kind of not worked out. He's gone on loan as well to Toulouse. In general, though, I'd probably say Stoke's team's a little bit stronger. It's a tight one, but I'm going to give them a B. Now, Swansea City's transfer window is an interesting one, okay, because they lost two of their best players. Sigurdsson pretty much ran the midfield for them for the last few years. Loads of goals, loads of assists. Big shoes to fill for whoever jumps in there. And Llorente, their top goal scorer from up front last year, has gone to Spurs to probably be a bench warmer. So you say, considering Swansea kind of struggled last season, losing those two ensures relegation. However, they have brought in some decent players. They brought in Wilfried Bony, who scored goals for fun when he was at Swansea before. If he can find that form again, they won't miss Llorente. Likewise, they managed to capture Renato Sanchez on loan, one of the most in-demand young players in world football right now. They managed to get him at Swansea. I know it's only a loan, but if he finds his true form, he could be an unbelievable signing. Likewise, I think Tammy Abraham could be a handful. He's a big striker as well, on loan from Chelsea. I think he'll get some goals. And you know what? Someone that I really liked last year, who played in a not great team, but he caught my eye, was Sam Klukas, who's left Hull, who obviously got relegated, and come into their midfield. So, are those guys as good as Sigurdsson are going to be in the Premier League? I'm not sure. But I don't think Swansea are necessarily any worse off. I think they've got a lot of money for Sigurdsson. 45 million for a club like Swansea is unheard of. So, you can't really argue with it. I'm sure they would have liked to keep him, but once he expressed his intention to go, for that money, it's not bad, is it? And they've spent well. I think Swansea have done all right. I'm going to actually give them a B+. I hope they stay up because they lost some big players, but I think they've handled it well. Now, Spurs were getting a lot of stick at the start of the window for doing no business. And they were one of the clubs in the league that could probably get away with doing little business because their club was so good. They probably had the best starting 11 in the league. Their squad needed some strengthening, particularly to cope with the European football demands. And they lost Kyle Walker fairly early on, but they got big money for him, 50 million. Daniel Levy, who runs Spurs, is no mug. He's a businessman at first, and he saw a good deal there. And he knew he had Trippier, and he knew he had the evolved Pokemon version of Kyle Walker Peters. And then he went and bought a new right back in Serge Aurier on deadline day. Serge Aurier, for half the price they sold Kyle Walker for. And Davinson Sanchez caught a lot of people's eyes in the Europa League last year, the young centre-back from Ajax. I don't know if he's going to feature that much, but he's going to replace maybe Kevin Wimmer as a backup centre-back to the likes of Alderweireld and Vertonghen. Decent purchase again. And Fernando Llorente was a player that Chelsea were very keen to get, and they kind of did a reverse Willian. Do you remember a few years ago when Tottenham were favourites to get Willian and then Chelsea just nicked him at the last minute? Well, they've done the same for Llorente here. And what it means is when Harry Kane is injured or can't play, they've got someone who can just lead their line a little bit better than the likes of Vincent Janssen did. They won't have to go with Son up front. They can keep him on the left if he's playing. Their squad has got stronger and it didn't need a lot of strengthening. I'd say Spurs were on track to have like a C or a D transfer window because they hadn't brought anyone in. But the business they've done in the last few weeks, I'm going to give them a B+. Okay, now Watford have been very busy. They're usually busy every summer, usually changing their manager as well, something they've got used to doing. They've done it again, getting Marco Silva from Hull. And they've had a good start to the season so far. I'm liking the look of the young Brazilian, Richarlison. I think he could be dangerous. They've got Chalobah from Chelsea, reinforcing the midfield. They've got Tom Cleverley from Everton. And Will Hughes from Derby has been a player that a lot of people have been looking at. Loads of under-21 caps. Been playing in the Championship for a while. He's got that enigmatic white haircut. He's going to have a chance to prove himself in the Premier League now. Andre Gray is a really good coup for them. They already had the likes of Troy Deeney. They've got another one of the kind of underappreciated English strikers in the Premier League now from Andre Gray. Nicked him from a rival club in Burnley. I think it's a good purchase. He's rapid. He scores goals. If he gets his rhythm quickly, he'll definitely have double figures for Watford this year, I'd say. In terms of departures, I wouldn't say they've lost anyone that was having a huge impact on their games. Valon Barami used to play a lot, but they've got loads of midfielders in. I think Watford have done well. This might surprise some people, but I'm actually going to give Watford an A-. Okay, we're nearly at the end. Let's go to West Brom now. West Brom lost Darren Fletcher, an experienced centre mid, veteran of the Premier League. Who they bring in? Gareth Barry. I think he's got the second most caps in Premier League history. He's only a few caps away from Ryan Giggs now, so by the end of the season, he will be the most capped player in Premier League history. Is he at the height of his powers? No, but he's more than good enough to sort out that West Brom midfield. Jay Rodriguez from Southampton, if he can stay fit, he'll get you a few goals. Oliver Burke is an interesting one. They got him from RB Leipzig, young Scottish winger. He's an exciting one. I think he could do well. Kieran Gibbs was a decent purchase. I wanted Gibbs to go to a club where he gets consecutive games at left back. He wasn't getting them at Arsenal. If he plays most of the season at West Brom, I think he'll be decent. But the best transfer they got was the loan signing of Kutroviak from PSG. What a coup this is. Got a couple of decent central defensive midfield options now with the likes of Kutroviak and Gareth Barry. West Brom have strengthened well. With the exception of Darren Fletcher, who they've definitely replaced, I wouldn't say they've lost anyone that bad. I'm going to give West Brom an A-. Finally, it's on to my club, West Ham United. Now, there was a point in the transfer window where I was really worried. We hadn't brought anyone in. We'd released a lot of people, most of which needed to go. Sold a few people as well, but our squad was looking very thin. Then we went on a bit of a blitz halfway through the window, a couple of weeks. We got Joe Hart. We got Zabaleta. We got Hernandez. What a signing that is. Best signing we made by far. Very good deal when you consider the amount some players are going for. To get Chicharito for under 20 million, lovely. Mexico's all-time top goal scorer. And of course, we've got Arnautovic, who I've already mentioned. 25 million is a gamble. I would have liked to see him go for like 17, 18 million. He's already got a red card. He's a little bit of a fiery character. He can make an impact in a handful of games a season when I see him. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to put back-to-back game-winning performances together, get 10 goals, 10 assists. It's not really his style, but he might pop up with some game-winning performances. Could be the difference for us. Obviously, we've had a bad start to the season. Is that the new signing's fault? I wouldn't say so. Is the manager going to go? Maybe. If we don't get a big win in our next game against Huddersfield, it could be lights out for Bilic. But I say our signings were actually decent. Maybe we're missing another pacey winger. Maybe we could have got a better centre mid. We tried to get William Carvalho. I thought we were going to get that over the line. If we'd got Carvalho, we could have no complaints with our window, in my opinion. Obviously, we can be complaining about the performances, but the window, the purchases, the intent shown have been decent. With the exception of maybe Faguli, who wasn't really that good for us last year. I wouldn't say we've lost anyone that good. Robert Snodgrass has been loaned out, but he didn't make the impact we hoped he would when we got him from Hull last year. We've loaned out the likes of Reece Oxford, who I'd love to have seen stay and play, but he wasn't playing, so we're not going to feel the impact of that either. The window has been good. We just need to get some better performances on the pitch. But ultimately, I think we could have used 1 or 2 more players considering the amount we released. So for that reason, I'm going to give West Ham a B+ for the window. So they are the Premier League teams covered. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my assessments. Do you think I got any grades massively wrong, or do you agree? I'm going to do some special mentions for some of the other clubs around Europe now. Starting off with PSG, who I'm giving an A-. Now you might be like, hang on, PSG got Neymar and Mbappe, 2 of the most in-demand players in world football. How can you not give them an A+? Well, first of all, they spent crazy money on them, okay? 200 million for Neymar, well, it's a loan, technically, the Mbappe deal, but it is going to end up like 170 million or something ridiculous. Now, Neymar, less of a gamble because he's just a huge brand and we know how good he is. Mbappe could go wrong. He's only had 1 big season. You know, he could just be one of those kids that dies out after a few years. A big gamble, a lot of money for someone who didn't really set the world alight, I wouldn't say. But they got their men. They strengthened from Monaco as well. They nicked him from there. That's decent business in that regard, just very expensive. The reason I'm not giving them an A+ though is they lost some good players as well, you know. Their centre mid looks a little bit weak to me right now. Unless they've got some youth players I don't know about. They've loaned out Kotroviak. Most importantly, Matuidi has gone to Juventus. And he didn't just go to Juventus, who's a big European rival for PSG. He went for 18 million. In this market, that is one of the best deals of the summer. You could have easily justified a club spending double that. When Matic is going for 40 million, is Matuidi that much worse than Matic? I know he's a little bit older, but I'd say they're similar level, at least. So you could easily justify spending 40 million on Matuidi. For Juventus to get him for 18, it's a very good buy for them. And not a great sale for PSG, in my opinion. Dani Alves, though, is a very good buy on a free transfer. Hence, their ability to then sell Aurier for 23 million. So that was a good bit of business there. Because the amount they spent, big gamble financially, they're going to find a way of getting around financial fair play, sure, but they've put themselves on the radar big time. They've made themselves the target for all the other European teams, you know, nicking all the good players, spending all the money. And the loss of Matuidi, I can't give them an A+, but I'm going to give them an A-. I'm going to give Bayern Munich an A. I think they've been really active. I think they've done well. They've made Koeman the permanent deal now. They've got Tolisso, very versatile player from Lyon. They got James Rodriguez on loan from Real Madrid. I expect him to do bits for Bayern. They got Nicolas Süle. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but a very good young German centre-back. They love nicking the good German players from the other Bundesliga teams. They've done that again this year. They lost a lot of good players, Bayern. They lost Philipp Lahm and Xabi Alonso to retirement, of course, but they've replaced very well. Sebastian Rudy is another player they bought in from Hoffenheim. They got Gnabry as well, though he's gone out on loan. Bayern Munich looks set for a few more years of domination in the German league. I'm going to give them an A for what they've done in the window. There's one team I'm going to give an A+ in European football. Can you guess who it is yet? It is going to be AC Milan. They have done absolute bits. Former giants of European football. They've been quiet. They've been a sleeping giant, a little Snorlax, but they've been woken up with a pokey flute. They are ready to get back to where they were. Have they brought in the world's best players? No, but they've strengthened in every position with decent, if not higher-level Europa League players, but sort of low-level Champions League players, which is what they need. They need to improve their team, get back to the constantly qualifying for the Champions League, and then they can attract the bigger names. And they're a big, big club. They've shown the intent. New owners, new start. I mean, you guys must have heard about how many good players AC Milan have bought in. Bonucci, they got from Juventus, okay? They spent a bit of money on him, like 40-odd million euros, but he's entering his prime. They've nicked him from the untouchable Juventus, who might actually be a little bit threatened this year by the AC Milan signings. They got Andre Silva from Porto. They got Chanaloglu, one of the best free kick takers in the world, from Leverkusen. They got Andrea Conte, a decent right-back, probably to replace De Siglia, who's gone the other way and gone to Juventus. They got Ricardo Rodriguez, one of the most in-demand left-backs of European football, from Wolfsburg. I think Liverpool were linked with him for a long time and they needed a left-back. They got Musacchio from Villarreal, strong centre-back. They got Lucas Biglia and Frank Kessie, 2 very strong centre midfielders from Serie A clubs. I mean, that's just reinvented their midfield and, again, taken them from their rivals. They kept Donnarumma, and he looks like at one point he might leave. It's not a signing, but it's a big thing for them. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm looking forward to seeing the squad they go with and the starting lineups they use throughout the season, because on paper it could be a whole new team. They had some decent players already scattered around the team, but they've strengthened everywhere. They literally are a new team. The question mark is how much they can gel. Because when you bring this many new players in, sometimes it can have a little bit of an adverse effect when players don't know each other. But eventually, I reckon by the time they get to January, they'll be playing some really good football. I don't think they're going to win the league. I don't think they're Juve quality, but it's about where they were and where they're going to be. You know, they've been lingering around the mid-table in Serie A for a while, but not anymore, guys. They're going to get right back to where they were if they keep this going. They'll get back in the Champions League this season, I predict. Top 4 finish. Could be a Europa League contender this year, along with the likes of Arsenal and Spurs when they eventually get knocked out of the Champions League because their group is so tough. I think that's going to happen as well. But yeah, expect AC Milan to go far into the competition, maybe winning the Europa League and getting back into the Champions League that way. But if not, they'll do it in the league anyway, I think. Quality buys, they're getting an A+ from me. They are my reviews. I know there's loads of other clubs that have done lots of business this year. You know, we didn't talk about Dembele going to Barcelona. What does that mean? The fact they lost Neymar. Ultimately, you've got to say it's a bad window for Barcelona there. I'll give them a C off the top of my head, and maybe a B+. But there's been a lot of moves. There is every summer. One of the best summer transfer windows ever. Leave a comment below with what you think of the business. What are the clubs that I didn't mention that you want to talk about? Who do you think's had the best window? Who do you think's had the worst window? What do you think was the best signing of the summer? If I had to say one right now, I'd probably say Matuidi for 18 million because of the value involved in that. I highly rate him. He was a metronome, the workhorse in the PSG midfield, and Juve have nicked him. But leave me a comment below. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. I'll see you again soon. Until then, don't go changing. Bye-bye.